Cyprus. That's what we'll talk about in today's video. This could be the Sarajevo of the global financial crisis. It could be like that assassination of that archduke way over in Serbia, and nobody knew much about it or cared much about it, but it set in motion a series of events that led to the catastrophe of World War I and indirectly World War II. What happened in Cyprus is what's going on in all these European banks, and in the U.S. banks too. They're increasingly investing their money in sovereign debt, that is, in debt owed by a country. And Cyprus, being three-quarters Greek, bought a lot of bonds that were owned or sold by the Greek government. And now that Greece is unable to pay its debts and facing bankruptcy and trying to cut its budget and not succeeding and in danger of all kinds of upheaval, the Cyprus banks are finding that they can't meet their obligations either. So they've gone to the European Central Bank and asked for a rescue. So far we've seen this play before. But now there's something new. Because Cyprus is such a small country and its holdings are vastly disproportionate to its population, because it basically is sort of an arm of Greece, kind of the Wall Street of Greece. The European Central Bank has now announced that it is going to invade the principle of bank accounts that people have in Cyprus. So if you have $100,000 in the bank in Cyprus, you could lose $30,000 of that. That would just go away, a tax, a confiscation, in order to bolster the solvency of the bank and of the bonds. And this is the first time anybody has ever talked about doing that. Now, if this spread to the United States, forget federal deposit insurance. It wouldn't mean anything. That's to protect the bank against a loss, not against a federal tax that's imposed. And we may be seeing the beginning of this global tsunami starting in Cyprus. The problem is that the world, which is worth $80 trillion in gross domestic product, owes $1.6 quadrillion in derivatives, in bets that banks have placed on the market, on whether the Yankees are going to win the pennant, on the daily temperature, on the rainfall average, all kinds of stuff are object of derivative bets. And they're called derivative because they are betting on something else. And all of these could come due, and the banks have no way to pay off this debt. And every bank is in the same boat. And when the bigger banks begin to find it hard to meet their obligations, like in Cyprus, you could see this contagion spreading throughout the world. And I believe that the outrageous, profligate, stupid, idiotic policies of this administration are absolutely walking over this cliff. You can't just run a budget deficit and print the money backed by absolutely nothing and then borrow it back to pay your own debt, which is essentially what we're doing. You can't just take it from your left pocket, put it in your right pocket, and say that you've repaid your debt. It's money that you created. It's money that you printed. And yet Obama is just continuing this. And by continuing 0% interest rates, banks can gamble their heart's content. I mean, they don't have to pay anything for the money. It's free money. They're passing it out on the street. So you might as well play with it. Go to the stock market. Go to Las Vegas. Invest in derivatives. Huge bets where if you win, a few people get very rich. And if you lose, the government picks up the losses. And that's what's going on now in the world. And I believe that Cyprus could be possibly the beginning of the end. What should you do? Gold. G-O-L-D. Gold is the best way to hedge against this, because we're increasingly not going to be able to trust politicians with printing presses and paper money. But we'll talk about that further down the road. Now, on a lighter note, and boy, we need a lighter note after that video, the third book in the Dubs trilogy has been published. Eileen and I and our friend Clayton Leota wrote it, called Dubs Goes to Philadelphia. Dubs, you recall, is my golden retriever, a big, fluffy, 95-pound, gold-haired fellow, and he loves to play ball. And Eileen and I have written books now to use Dubs stories to teach children about the ideals and the values behind the American government and the Constitution. because they can't get it anywhere else. They don't teach that in school. They talk about how we eradicated the Indians, but they don't talk about free speech and freedom of the press and that kind of stuff. And in bookstores, we checked, and it's just books like Heather Has Two Mommies. So this book really is a fun way of teaching children 4 to 8 about constitutional rights. So after independence, they wrote a constitution to set up a fabulous new governing institution. Dubs and his friend Daisy, we went to the National Constitution Center so that we could see how this new constitution made us all free. We have free speech, free press, and dogs have the right to bark anytime, but never to bite. So you can pick this up at your local children's bookstore or at dickmorris.com or Amazon or Barnes & Nobles. Thanks a lot for watching.